We typically have one of, if not the highest survival rates of hatchlings in the nest in the whole state of North Carolina.
To get certified, there's a lot of different things you got to learn how to do. You can't just throw it on because it's 60 pounds worth of equipment. The main thing you got to learn how to do is balance it.
The house is built in 1861, so it sort of goes through the entire history of the war. The last Bellamy died in that house in 1946. So they all, the heirs inherited and then they kept the house. At that point, family fortunes had diminished quite a bit. And as soon as that last family member died, the house went into a steady decline, which lasted beyond the fire that happened there in 1972, all the way up to the late 80s. The family tried to fix it up, and they did as much as they could do, and they saved the building and saved the slave building and all that. Then they got to the late 80s and they decided that they'd taken it about as far as they could go, so they gave it to Preservation North Carolina, which is a state organization which essentially fixes up old wrecked buildings with historic significance all over the state. And they've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these over like 75 years of existence. This one, the Bellamy, is the one that group kept. They kept it as a museum, say community hub again, with that in mind, and didn't find somebody else to restore it and fix it. They restored it and fixed it. And so they kept it as exactly that. They wanted to use it as, say, for preservation, education, architectural, and of course the big social history element, which is what we talk about all the time. The idea was to make it a museum in a house, which means you can put other things in the house, like exhibits and whatnot, and concerts, anything like that you want to do. And also to make it a community hub. So have people, locals and tourists and whoever, come in and see the place and experience it in different ways. I've heard it phrased as, you get people to come in and take the tour the first time, how do you get them to come back the second time to a house museum? Which is always an important question for a building like that, or site like that. So the second thing that we do, or many of the things we do, involve school kids taking tours, tourists who come through town and then we do jazz concerts or parlor concerts, or we do wine festivals, or we do dinner parties in there, or things like that. We have African American History Days, we have family fun days where last time we had 1,700 people come through and do pony rides, and an environmental day because old technology and architecture like that comes around as new tech again. And so we talk about how that is sort of exhibited in that house. And then we have art exhibits in the house as well. So we do about 65 different events a year of different kinds on top of the tours that we give. And so you can experience all that, and that's how we get people to keep coming back and keep seeing the place in a new light all the time. Now we can actually give a more accurate assessment of what life was like for an urban slave on that site. 1859 is when that building was built. It's right next to the main house. So the way we sort of phrase the whole place, the message we want people to leave with is something about the life of two groups of people on a particular site. You've got the rich white planter elite and the enslaved African Americans side by side, one owning the other, one working for the other. And it's finished in 1861, and then there's the history through the Civil War to 1865. So during that period of time, everything for all those people completely changes. One group is freed and does not live there anymore. The other group has to flee, fights a war, loses everything, and then has to beg for their house back and come back and rearrange, the way that they lived. The way we interpret it is to look at the slave building, look at the main house, and talk about all the people who were there, because the buildings, are only as important as the people who, and the stories we can tell about those people. And then look at it from the perspective of all those people who were on that site, because it's a small snapshot of what happened in the whole Southern history, American history, right at that moment, 1861, 1865. And you get that by being there.
Well, Wilmington has always traditionally been known as a city of a million azaleas. This is an idea that began many, many years ago, and there was a wonderful man named J.D. Causey, who is still a member of our community, and he is an honorary member of the Garden Club. And he came up with the idea of planting azaleas around Wilmington to make sure that we were a city of a million azaleas. If you go to Greenfield Lake, you'll see the benefit of his hard work. The first week in April has been proclaimed by the city Plant an Azalea Week. So Cape Fear Garden Club's Civic Improvements Committee had this idea to remind people to go on out when the azaleas begin to bloom and choose something beautiful and put in your own garden. But also, we choose a place every year, be it a school or a street or a public area of some sort, and plant an azalea. One year we planted an azalea in the Japanese garden at Airlie Gardens to commemorate the tsunami victims. And one year we partnered with Castle Street to do a big open house and to celebrate the renovation of the street and all the new shops that are coming there. And we planted an azalea to commemorate one of our longtime residents, Dolly Pearson. She passed away at the age of 102. And she was an avid gardener and really beloved. So these are ways in which we try to involve the community, and it all kind of centers around this beautiful plant. But what's wonderful is that in recent years, growers have developed new ways to make azaleas not just bloom once a year, but year-round. There's so many ways to use them. And so we're trying to remind people that azaleas are an important part of our culture and our history, and with the Azalea Festival, our economy as well.
Around here, we work hard for you. We get started before the sun comes up and work well into the night. We use only the freshest ingredients for our food and our craft beers. At Front Street Brewery, we're passionate about our work and what we serve. For nearly 20 years, we've been proud to call Wilmington home. So from our family to yours, thanks for coming in. Front Street Brewery, serving you since 1995.
She was once considered the world's greatest sea weapon and went on to become one of the most highly decorated American battleships of World War II. Now moored in downtown Wilmington, she's one of the most highly decorated family attractions in North Carolina, serving a new generation as an exciting, hands-on historical adventure. Have a blast exploring the past aboard the battleship North Carolina. Adventure calls.
The most talked about travel experience is a river cruise. We work with top name operators. There is no better way to see the world than on a river cruise from Four Seasons Travel and spend less time getting there and more time being there.
Bring your home movies into Carolina Video Edit Centers for professional high-quality transfer. From old school VHS to the latest digital cameras, we can transfer to disk, hard drive, or upload directly. Whether it's digital archiving or social media sharing, we can do it at Carolina Video Edit Centers.
It's a little taste of Mexico right here in Wilmington. La Costa Mexican Restaurant. Start off the night with La Casa Rita or one of their delicious icy cold drinks. Then dig in for delicious La Costa specialties like arroz con pollo, carne asada, seafood molcajete, and fajitas. La Costa Mexican Restaurant with 3 locations in Porter's Neck, Market Street, and Oleander.
To me, one of the intriguing things about research and discovery is finding these lesser-known historical events, incidents, where they've been lost to history. And in this case, a good friend of mine, who was a local veterinarian and local history buff, his name was Dr. Robert Treadwell, took me out to the site. This was back in April of 1980. Drove through the area of what is today Halliburton Park. We stopped in the area where Dr. Treadwell said that he discovered years before a number of Civil War artifacts that led him to believe that there was a battle at that site. So I became intrigued. He showed me where the Confederate earthworks were. And so we started exploring the area. We were using metal detectors, and sure enough, we found quite a few fired projectiles, both rifle musket mini balls and canister shot and cannonball fragments. And so it was obvious that, as Dr. Treadwell suspected, there had been a firefight there, but what did it all mean? There was very little documentation in the official records of the Union Confederate armies, but a couple of pieces of correspondence by the Confederate commanding general of the defense of Wilmington. His name was Major General Robert F. Hoke. And writing from his position south of Wilmington, he postmarked his correspondence to authorities in the city, Crossroads or Forks Roads. And when you looked at a map of the area where the battle was fought, just south of the Confederate earthworks, there was an intersection of the main road between Wilmington and the lower reaches of New Hanover County, known as the Federal Point Road. Southerners renamed it the Confederate Point Road during the war. It was the Carolina Beach Road of its day. It was the road that all troops coming and going to Fort Fisher would have used. And it was the road that Union forces used in pursuing the Confederates who were retreating towards Wilmington in February of 1865. And just south of the Confederate earthworks, there was a by road that ran toward the Cape Fear River. So I just started referring to the battle as the Battle of Forks Road because I just thought it sounded better than the Battle of Crossroads. Larger scheme of things, it was a small skirmish, but it turned out to be where the Confederates made their last stand before evacuating Wilmington. And the other interesting thing that I discovered was that the principal Union combatants at this battle were United States colored troops. And so I thought, you've got an African-American site here and an important area in terms of the Confederate abandonment of the lower Cape Fear, which was incredibly significant because Wilmington, up to that point, had been the South's main blockade-running seaport. It was literally the lifeline of the Confederacy in the last year and a half of the war. But even Robert E. Lee said, as early as January of 1863, Wilmington must be defended at all hazards. And then by 1864, he said, if Wilmington falls, I cannot maintain my army. So the evacuation of Wilmington after the fall of Fort Fisher was a death knell, really, for the Confederacy.
For 9 months of the year, between April and December, on Saturday mornings, a 2-block area of North Water Street in front of the federal courthouse downtown Wilmington is transformed into the Riverfront Farmers Market from 8 until 1. Growers and artists primarily from New Hanover, Brunswick, and Pender counties set up tables with tent covers in this curbside market situated along the scenic Cape Fear River. Each week it attracts a growing number of locals who wish to purchase vegetables and fruits directly from the local farmers and producers. The offering most weeks will include fresh vegetables and fruits, berries, herbs, flowers and plants, eggs and cheeses. There's farm-raised meats, seafood, honey and baked goods, confections with plenty of legumes, pickled items, jams and jellies, arts and crafts, and musical entertainment is provided during the Saturday morning event held each week. In this 9-month period, it takes breaks only for the Azalea and River festivals downtown. The Riverfront Farmers Market was developed to provide a place for local growers, producers, artisans, and crafters to sell their goods directly to consumers, as a means of educating customers about local farming and seasonal eating, and to encourage and promote the use of locally grown farm products. It also provides a popular community atmosphere for outdoor shopping. The popularity of these farmers markets is growing, evidenced by additional locations and days, including a Wrightsville Beach Farmers Market on Mondays from 8 to 1. Poplar Grove Plantation operates its farmers market Wednesdays from 8 to 1. Carolina Beach also operates on Saturdays through early October.
Alpha Mortgage. We're the only full-service mortgage banking firm in southeastern North Carolina. From origination through processing, underwriting, funding, closing, we do it all locally. More than 90 professional staff right here in Wilmington. Alpha Mortgage is the leading mortgage lender in southeastern North Carolina. Alpha Mortgage is the lender more real estate agents and builders rely on. We work with your realtor and your builder every step of the way from application to closing. We have the best rates, best service because we are Alpha. Alpha Mortgage.
Hieronymus Seafood and Oyster Bar, voted best seafood restaurant in Wilmington by Encore magazine readers. Here is where you can count on the freshest local seafood daily, served with fresh herbs selected from their own garden. Enjoy daily chalkboard drink specials in the cocktail lounge. Choose to eat in the Oyster Bar for freshly steamed oysters or crab legs. Or you can dine family style in the comfortable and spacious dining room. Seasonal catch from local waters is always on the menu at Hieronymus Seafood, where fresh is best.
Your passport awaits to 3 of Wilmington's most historic homes. Now, for one low admission price, you can visit historic Bellamy Mansion, the city's grandest antebellum home, the Burgwin Wright House Museum and Gardens, beautifully restored for a step back in history, and Latimer House, representing opulent life in Wilmington before the Civil War. Purchase your passports at any one of the historic home locations and discover 3 great reasons to visit Wilmington's past. Tickets are good for 1 week from the date of purchase.
And I grew up around being in studios and stuff like that, but I never really thought I wanted to do this. My dad's been in the business for about 40 years, and he's won numerous Emmy Awards. And he was doing a shoot in Myrtle Beach, and they needed a 3rd utility man. And I was in college, and I wanted to become a cop. So there was the opening in the House of Blues, and he said, well, can you come down and be a utility man? The opening act was the Blues Brothers, so we were right up in front of the stage, and I just got enamored by everything. And I said, you know what, this is the path I want to go, and that's where I ended up. I started here at a local TV station, and then from there I jumped from here and I went into New York City and started working for a crew company there. So we worked for CNN, Dateline, MTV, so it was a good learning experience. It was a great move. After I was in New York for about 4 years, 9/11 happened, and I worked during 9/11 for a while for Larry King. Inside Edition called. I said, okay, I'll take the job, and I worked for another 4 years for them. And I always tried to make everything I shot on my shoulder smooth, but I always wanted to do Steadicam. I was always enamored by wearing all the gear. Growing up, I was a catcher throughout my whole life. I caught in college, so I was always used to wearing a lot of equipment. When I left Inside Edition, I came down here, made a career move, opened a restaurant. I was in that business for 3 years, sold it, and I had the opportunity to go back in the business. And I said, you know what, this will be my opportunity to go buy all the equipment, because you need to buy the equipment to do Steadicam. You can't rent it or anything like that. You need to own it, and I bought it, and then that's when I started doing the Steadicam. The training that you go through to get certified, there's a lot of different things you got to learn how to do. You can't just throw it on because it's 60 pounds worth of equipment. The main thing you got to learn how to do is balance it. There's a lot of things you need to learn how to do, and it's something that you need to practice almost every day. I was in a car accident about 5 years ago, crushed my right leg, and I was spent 1.5 years in a wheelchair. So I was looking for a way to continue to work but not put a lot of pressure on my leg. And then there's a guy named Chris Fawcett, who's a legend in this business. I contacted him, and he said, well, I just came up with something new. So he said, look at this, this will help you, maybe you should try this. So that's what gave me the drive to say, hey, there's another way for me to move around. The advantages of having a Segway is you just dress the Stedicam operator up, get them on the Segway, and go. Especially for a small budget feature that doesn't have a lot of money to spend on dollies, tracks, grips. This is basically one guy, one rig, and you could do the shot over and over and over again. It's a different replacement for a dolly that's more flexible. It's something new that most operators don't do right now. It is dangerous. Definitely one of the reasons why a lot of guys don't do it. You know, Steadicam's anywhere between 60 and 80 grand. they're not going to put their gear at risk of destroying it from falling off a Segway, because you're missing the main part of the handlebars. But if you do it right, you can get great shots out of it. So I did all my workshops, did all my practicing, so I'm back to up to where I should be to do jobs now. So yeah, I'm open to do all kinds of stuff. I like to do all the independent films, commercials. Anywhere there's work, I'll go.
Bald Head has a great record of what sea turtle nesting is on our coast. One of the things we're most proud of at the Conservancy is our survival rates. We typically have one of, if not the highest survival rates of hatchlings in the nest in the whole state of North Carolina. Bald Head does have one of the highest densities of sea turtles nesting on our coast. Bald Head's the only place on the coast that you can actually get out and see a nesting sea turtle working with naturalists and interns. We've been protecting sea turtles for 30 years. That means 30 years ago, when our volunteers helped the first babies into the water, those sea turtles have lived their entire life cycle and are now coming back as sea turtle moms, laying their nests every single summer. It's an extraordinary experience and one that I strongly encourage everyone to participate in. We want everyone to know how important our barrier islands are, and we want everyone to know how to protect the islands and the residents, and certainly the animals and plants that live there. So we have about 20,000 people a year who come through our doors and participate in our education program. We've got a dorm that welcomes scouts and groups that want to come and spend a weekend learning about nature on Bald Head. And then we have two important buildings. The first one is our Fleming Environmental Center. This serves as an education center and a small museum where anybody, anytime, can come in and see and learn about the nature of Bald Head. We also have our brand new LEED Gold certified Barrier Island Study Center. It is the headquarters of our 11 full-time staff and up to 37 additional part-time staff members. But it's also the center where we conduct research. We bring researchers from academic institutions all over the world. You name it, the Barrier Island Study Center is the focal point for our Bald Head Island Conservancy.
Discover more to do and see in Wilmington. See the attractions, events, businesses, and people that make this a great place to live. Keep your eyes on us as we keep our eye on Wilmington on CBS 10 WILM.
Hi, I'm Dave Baker, Wrightsville Beach Ocean Rescue Director. Here are a few things that you can do when you come to the beach so it'll be enjoyable. Remember to wear your sunscreen. It may not feel like you're getting burned, but by the end of the day, you'll realize you should have put on that sunscreen. Coat your full body, SPF 30 or above. Don't forget the tops of your feet and the tops of your ears. These are areas that people forget. Also, what we'd like you to do is, should you have children, please watch your children. People get caught up in the excitement, they run into the water and look back and they can't find mom or dad and they start roaming the beach. What we ask you to do is teach your kids to go to the nearest lifeguard and let them know that they cannot find you. Parents, what we need from you is come to the nearest lifeguard stand. Tell us the description of your children, then we'll let everybody else know on the radios and we'll find your kids. We do have some ordinances that you may not be aware of. One of those, pop-up tents are great to provide shade and keep you from getting burnt while in the sun. However, you must take these down every day and not leave them up on the beach overnight. This is for the safety of the wildlife during the turtle season as they come up to nest during the summer months. One of the things we want you to do is to not dig holes any deeper than the waist of the smallest individual in your party. What could happen is that the sand could collapse around them and it could squeeze them. If it's any deeper than their waist, it could compress around their chest and they'll have difficulty breathing. There's a lot of times, and unfortunately in the past, there have been people that have been buried up to their neck and it has been very, very difficult to get them out. And when you finish digging your hole, fill it in. People do walk this beach at night and we want them to be safe and we don't want them to be falling into holes.